He's like, hey, I know you're not ready for it now, but this guy, Bo Nickel, you have to do a card with him. Him walking into the podcast room, and I had the art set up, and I unveiled it, dropped the cloth, and then he just sees it. And it was probably the best reaction that I've had so far. I got in the best shape of my life, benched the most, ran the fastest. I mean, I was a beast. Wow, you went deep. I can truly appreciate you digging into that. On my chest actually is that quote.
What is up, everyone? My name is Alex, aka Doer, back with another episode of Doers Take Breaks, where we invite a guest, talk all things MMA, and jump into the world of collectibles. Today, I have the pleasure to sit down with none other than Jordon Spector, full-time artist, full-time storyteller. If you don't already know who this talented man is, I sincerely believe it's only a matter of time before you see his face and name everywhere. He continues to up his game when it comes to his craft, continues to up the stakes when it comes to the level of projects he's putting out. If you don't believe me, let me give you a little bit of a rundown of who we are working with here. Jordon has been commissioned by many of the top tier companies in the sports industry, including Fanatics, Goldine Auctions, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the NFLPA, just to name a few, not to mention that he's also been commissioned by top tier professional athletes as well on their own, most recently including Bo Nickel, UFC middleweight, rookie of the year, and rising star in the UFC. If that is not enough, I don't know what else I can tell you. With the stage set now, I want to jump right into it. Jordon, thank you again for hopping on the show today. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, thank you, man. I'm doing good. I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to talk about this stuff, and killed the intro, so I appreciate that, and looking forward to jumping into it.
Of course, I had to give my guy, your roses. Your track record, your resume, honestly, is so impressive, and I'm glad that you hit my radar. This is exactly right up the alley of our show. We mentioned Bo Nickel. We mentioned that you are doing some work with him. That is on the trading card side of things. So I'm excited for folks to learn more about you, learn more about the project. I know that my trading card junkies are going to want to jump right into that. So guys, you can jump to segment number 3 for that, but come back and listen to the rest of the show as well. Let's jump into it. I want to start by getting to know you a little bit better. So I want to start with growing up around art and sports. Now, I know there's a lot to unpack there, so I'm going to tee you up a bit. Your father, from my research, was an artist as well. Why don't we start there? What type of influence did your father give you into getting into art, and where did that lead you early in your life?
Yeah, so my father, still to this day, I consider to be more talented than I am. He's just very diverse in his skills, and he's good at drawing, painting, sculpting. Every year he makes the most incredible family Christmas card that goes out to friends and family. Just
Wow.
so many cool little things. He never actually pursued like a self-made business like I have. He, for about 20 years, was an industrial designer. He basically designed toys for a company for a long time. That was sort of his job, and that's what he went to school for. But growing up, he had a heavy influence on my skills to create. God given for both of us, but him being there to give me his skills and just teach me many different things when I was a kid. Still carry through to this day. I never went to art school. I feel like the talent to
Wow.
create is God given for anybody. I don't really think you need art school. I think it's just a matter of if you got it or if you don't. But yeah, he's been one of the biggest influences in just my skills to create. So
That's incredible. What does he have to say about your career now, seeing everything you've been able to do for almost the last 10 years just in the art world? What does he say when he looks back and reflects at, your career so far?
I guess we really haven't had that full conversation on something like that, but I would think if you asked him the question, he'd be pretty happy about it. And I think I hope that he, in a way, like kind of lives that self-made artist dream through me, and it's cool to have him still help to this day with my business. Both my parents do, actually. My mom's retired, so she's kind of like my part-time assistant. I
I
pay her
love
monthly to
that.
help with, various things, just staying on top of me to make sure I'm organized. And
Make sure
my
you're not
dad,
cursing too much.
my dad is like the best quality control person you could have. He's very careful and meticulous. So whenever I have something super careful to get packaged up, I lean on him to help with
Mhm.
that. And yeah, they're. I mean, both my parents. I'm super blessed for them and their support.
That is a
So
blessing. Wow.
yeah, for
I
sure.
see a future Immortals piece coming about your dad. You know, it might be the place to do so. Whether it's a
Cool.
collaboration between you two or just a piece, you know, to represent like what he means to you in the world of arts. But that's an awesome story. That's really really cool. And when does football come into play?
So football was inspired by two individuals. I would say I played soccer growing up. Pretty common U.S. children's sport that you're kind of thrown into.
Yeah.
Um, and I can't remember the exact moment or play or whatever, but pretty at a pretty young age, I began watching football and watching my cousin in particular play football, and he inspired me to play the game, and also Brian Dawkins inspired me to play the game of football. And I always remember those two individuals really just making like inspiring me to want to do what they did on the field. I'm like, I want to be that guy, I want to do what
Yeah.
they did, So um, that probably started when I was 8, 9 years old.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't really a football fan prior to that. Like my dad is not like a huge Eagles fan or football fan. He's not even a huge sports guy in general.
Really.
That's really
Okay.
me. And I was always kind of the athlete in the family too. So, um, definitely started with those two individuals, and it's cool because eventually I've been able to do a lot of business with Brian Dawkins and
Yeah,
have
which we'll
what
definitely
I do.
dig into. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
definitely dig into that. Rest in peace to your cousin, because I know that he is no longer with us. But can you tell me about the meaning behind what's tattooed on your chest? Lose your dreams and you will lose your mind?
Yeah, man. Wow, you went deep. I can truly appreciate you digging into that. Yeah, on my chest actually is that quote. But lose your dreams, you lose your mind. I believe it's from a song as well. I can't remember what song, but it was something my cousin always lived by. It was in his bios on social media and something that I've heard him say before. And for me, that was my best way to remember and honor him.
After playing football in high school, the goal was to get recruited by a Division I school, but it doesn't happen. So you explore the option of D2 and D3 schools. You actually receive some offers, which is not an easy thing to do in itself, but you decide to pass on that because you really wanted the experience of a Division I school. So you walk away from the sport in your mind, go into your freshman year into Temple University. It's about 1 year in before you, not even 1 year, it's probably like halfway into your freshman year, and you realize, like, man, I miss playing. So you make this commitment to yourself to get in the craziest shape of your life, and you give yourself a goal to do something as a walk on. Tell us how that goes for you. Tell us about what that mindset was to get into, prepared for that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the football journey. I didn't expect to get recruited by a Division I school coming out of high school, and I played at a smaller school. I didn't have the best resume. I had a decent film, and it stinks too because nowadays I feel like you have so many more tools at your disposal as a young athlete in high school. You can have a
Hmm.
much better tape now and much
Hmm.
better highlights to show for it. But but yeah, I just decided to go to Temple University because it's a bigger school. I wanted to have that much better of an education, be in the city. I just felt like it was a better opportunity overall. And
Hmm.
as I was there, I started to see certain guys that played for the team. And I'm like, oh, all right, like that guy's not that big, and this guy's not that fast, and things like that. And I'm like, maybe I got a shot. And then, but it was really hearing and learning about this walk on opportunity that they have there. I hope they brought it back because for a time they got rid of it. But this isn't like a recruited walk on. There's walk ons at D1 schools that are invited to camp, so they don't get a
Okay.
scholarship, but they're still invited to come. And camp is kind of their little trial to make the team. But
Yeah.
for me, it was a true walk on tryout where you're from the street. You're just walking up. You're a student, obviously, but
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
try out, show your skills, and show what you're made of. So once I found out about that, I was like, huh, well, I have to give this a shot. And then I found a guy, his name's Graham, really good friend of mine to this day. And he was training with somebody who is from the area outside Philadelphia, used to train like Larry Fitzgerald, like big time
Mm.
athletes, and knows this stuff. And I spent about 7 or 8 months training with him. And like you said, got in the best shape of my life, benched the most, ran the fastest. I mean, I was a beast.
Yeah.
Um, and that propelled me into the tryout for the team and helped me make the team. So it's cool,
And
man.
what's the most memorable moment of that tryout? Is there anything that really stood out? Did you walk away
There
from
is.
that
Oh
tryout
my god.
saying like, yeah, that's it, I did it?
There's two, but there's one distinct moment. And this is the type of podcast I wish I could have my friend Graham on because he's great at telling the story. Unfortunately, he didn't make the team, and he had like a turn of events after that that really took him downhill,
Ooh,
and then he eventually had a reality check and really changed his life around. But he trained alongside me and didn't make the team, and but he was always super happy that I had made it. And there was this moment during the tryout where like it's bigger guys and smaller guys. He was bigger, so he was trying out for linebacker,
hmm.
and we were
And
doing
your position
like
was running back.
running back. Yeah,
Yeah.
not barely any receiver experience, mind you. So they had us running routes and catching the ball, and they had me do this like I think it was a stop and go like right down the middle, and they had me just keep running and running and running, and I was hauling it, and then the dude gunned it, and all the big guys are watching, including my friend, and I'm mid stride and just lay out for this thing like almost like a diving catch, and caught it like beautifully,
Yeah.
and he's witnessed the whole thing, and he was just he couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, because I not only caught that, but I caught all the other balls that were thrown my
Yeah.
way. So I
You were
I
on.
I huh?
Yeah, I said you were on. You could feel you were on. I mean, you were catching
Oh, I was
everything. It
on
was just
fire, man.
going.
I was on fire,
Yeah.
and but it's funny because I made the team as a receiver, and as quickly as I could, switched to running back. Because I'm like, guys, I'm not a good receiver. Don't let that fool you. um,
That's
there's
incredible.
Yeah, there was that, and running the 40-yard dash, and feeling like I really crushed that. And I found out after, because I was always curious what I ran. It was hand time, but I
Mm.
ran like a 4.4, so that was really good. That's what I had been timing when I was training. So I was hoping that
Okay.
I would crush that because it's a huge factor in a tryout
Yeah.
or actually NFL combine. Um,
Yeah.
so those were two big moments from it.
That's great. And so, as
Yeah.
quickly as you're riding the high, you make the team. Super impressive. 2 years later, you walk away due to suffering. I believe it was your fourth or fifth concussion. I like to say you can go through things or you can grow through things. And even calling back to lose your dream and you will lose your mind. Football was your passion. So did at that moment when you had to make that decision to walk away, did it feel like a bit like you were losing a dream and you were going through something? And then talk us just through, if you can be vulnerable with us, just what that journey to discover how to get yourself back up in a good mental, place.
Yeah, it was super tough. Very emotional time making that decision. I had concussions in high school, and it's crazy where concussion research has gone now these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, as it relates to football, and that really wasn't out back when I played.
Yeah.
And it was really an equipment issue too in high school,
Okay.
because I eventually got my own helmet and had no issues. And there was a lot of kids like that, but when I played in college, you kind of forget about that part of the game, and after getting another one, it's not like it was severe or anything like that. It was just I got another concussion,
Yeah.
and it was just one of those moments where I'm like, don't want to keep doing this. Is this worth the risk? Do I have
Yeah.
a shot at the NFL?
Yeah.
Um, so it was a super hard decision to walk away and just try to be logical about it. But that's what I did, and yeah, it was emotional. And for a period of time, it was hard to figure out the next step, and it was a gut shot too. It's like kind of lose your confidence a little bit after that, after all the hard work I put in.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, I made so many amazing connections through that experience, and you know leveled up extremely just from the journey of setting your mind to a goal,
Hmm.
going out, training for it, dedicating to it, and succeeding. And that same principle can apply to everything, and it applies to
Yeah.
my business. It applies to everything I do in life. Um, so eventually after that, I had a couple, signs from God, if you will, to go down the art path again, not
Yeah.
thinking it was going to lead to what it did today. But I had this mindset of I'm not going to let this stop me, and kind of needed like what's next to give me this same feeling, this same kind of rush.
Yeah.
So if it couldn't be playing the game, at least it could be creating art of the game. And that was the first time I started to create art that was football and sports related. And here we are
Yeah.
many years later.
Yeah, if you couldn't play the sport, you were channeling how to bring that same energy, through another outlet,
Exactly.
and it was art, which had been a secret weapon of yours for a long time, but now you can actually use it for something even greater. So,
Mm-hmm.
2015, during your senior year, you get back into art, form of therapy, form of an outlet, and from this we have Spector Sports Art, which is born, maybe not officially yet on paper, but this is
Mm-hmm.
really where it starts. That you also earned your doctorates by 2019, which again, kudos to you, right? You stuck with school as well. You always had that as a backdrop. And I think in general, the power of networking, you staying in school another 4 years, right? Like, relationships could build from that, learnings from that. So kudos to you. I wanted to make sure to not just brush over that. Congratulations on your doctorates as well, which was in
Appreciate that.
physical therapy, correct?
Yeah, that was always the educational route. I had my fair share of injuries and went through the rehab process and was like, huh, this could be a cool career path.
Yeah.
And I always felt comfortable with that as well. But the art eventually took over, and I stuck with it.
Got it. So with Spectre Sports Art, I wanted to ask early challenges, right? What were some of the early challenges you faced as you tried to get this business off the ground? And yeah, any early memories that really stick out to you that you can share?
Yeah, something I still struggle with to this day is being patient. Being patient,
Really? Okay.
letting things play out the way they should. Trying to force things when they're not there.
Hmm.
Force, whether that's something you're just trying to make happen, something
Hmm.
a project you want to do with an athlete, or a deal you want to make with somebody, whatever the case is. But
Yeah.
that's always been tough, is not forcing stuff, because most of the time the best opportunities, they come to you,
Yeah.
and that has always been the case. Um, Other expected struggles are just the common struggles of building a business, whether that's growing social media, um, building a website, getting customers. It just takes time. It takes time. It takes consistency. Um, it takes continual effort and research into what it is you need to get done.
Yeah.
So a lot of little things like that. But yeah, that the first thing I mentioned was a big one.
Would you say that it's easier, not easy, but it's easier to be consistent when you're passionate about what you do?
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, like, a very common known thing, especially for artists, is like you can do art as a hobby. Now, when you want to
Mhm.
take it from hobby to business, it's not for everybody. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And I feel super blessed that I even have been able to acquire the skill set and the mindset to attack things from a business standpoint, and
Yeah.
not just an artist standpoint. Some artists that are big in their business will tell you it's 70 business, 30% art. I like to think it's more 50-50. But
Yeah.
it's tough, man. It's tough to have both parts of the mind working on art versus the business. There's so much that goes into it. So, and
Yeah.
I've helped a fair share of artists myself, whether it's making a
Wow.
website or just giving them general advice on how to do this, how to do that, connections to vendors that I use, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Tell me how relationships and or community, I kind of feel like they're one and the same, have changed the trajectory of your company and also the power of saying yes to opportunities.
Mm, glad you brought that one up. Yeah, this is one I always touch on. Well, I'll get to the first one with relationships. That kind of ties into the yes thing, right? Because relationships come through opportunities, and I think the bigger picture of just trying to treat everybody with respect their time,
Yep.
and building those relationships and doing a good job the first time, making good first impression. Those are always going to propel you forward. And a prime example is me being on this podcast today.
Yep.
I don't know you, you don't know me, but you reached out, and the fact that you are willing to spend your time listening to my story, that inspires me, and that makes me want to hop on and do this with you. So, and you told me before the podcast some of the connections you have and some of the
Yeah.
stuff that you think would be cool for what I do. So, you never know who you're going to meet, who they are, who they know.
Yeah.
So, I'm always going to be open minded, and that's a hard game to play because I'm at the point now where I say no to a lot of, maybe not opportunities, but just projects or
Yeah.
people that, can you do this custom piece or this portrait?
Yeah.
I often say no, or I'll make up excuses if I feel bad saying no, whatever the case is. But I got to be careful with my time, which is always
Yeah.
one of the biggest battles. Um, but yeah, so, and again, to saying yes to opportunities goes such a long way. I mean, there's so many very amazing stories, I feel, of how this opportunity came about or this opportunity came about just from one small interaction.
Yeah, a
What that
simple
what that
yes or remaining curious, to follow through on that thought of yours. Tell me or tell the folks who Brian Dawkins is and what he means to the Spector Sports Art story arc.
Yeah, man. So B Doc, as we said it in the beginning, huge inspiration to me playing football when I was young. I would watch his Weapon X hype tape before every high school football game, and you hear that from a lot of either current or previous football players around my age,
Yeah.
or older, younger too. Like, there's nobody, in my opinion, that's ever been more passionate about the game of football than Brian Dawkins.
Yeah.
And maybe comparable like Ray Lewis and your dogs on defense, but man, just the way he approached the game, played the game, and then his combination of aggression on the field and turning it off the field, and just being so outstanding on in both realms.
Yeah.
All that stuff inspired me. So as I started to build my business and do my art, one of the first big hits I ever did was this Weapon X print that I still sell to this day on my website.
Yeah.
And one of my big goals and ambitions was to eventually connect with Brian Dawkins, and how can I work with this guy? And I'd love to just support what he does too, if I can in some way. Maybe not now, but in the future as I
Yeah.
grow. So even on my website, spectorsportsart.com, you can see the first Weapon X piece that I did that we still sell. A portion of proceeds from each thing I sell are donated back to Brian Dawkins Impact Foundation.
Hmm.
Um, but even more importantly, last year, that relationship led to me releasing my first ever trading card, which
Yeah.
began the journey of Immortals,
Yeah.
me trademarking Immortals and making that my new trading card venture. And when I was going into that thinking and process, I spent a couple years wanting to make a trading card and thinking, what relationship could I leverage the most here to do something outstanding? And Brian Dawkins was a no brainer. So
Yes.
he was my first trading card last year, and we sold out of that, and it really couldn't have gone better.
The
Um,
inaugural piece. Yeah.
the inaugural card, and it's amazing, man. It's amazing to think back to not only how I eventually was able to connect with him, but the different parts of that process and what I do with him now. So it's cool.
Yeah. Connecting with him, yeah, on like a one-on-one human level, and continuing to nurture that relationship even after the initial meetup many years ago to build on top of that, and now you have a friendship with him as well. And we're
Mm.
going to touch more on Immortals for sure in the next segment. But 2018, I believe this is the right year. Tell me about this billboard story.
Oh man, the billboard. That's a bittersweet one, but I understand why it would come up because of how much publicity it got. Um, yeah, I back then the Eagles won the Super Bowl. The was it the yeah so earlier 2018 they won the Super Bowl, and then going into that summer, there was this opportunity where somebody lost a bet or something like that, and there was going to be this billboard put up in New England outside of Gillette Stadium, basically trolling the Patriots. And whoever was involved, like, asked me, like, "Hey, like, we want you to make the design for this thing," and I wasn't allowed to do like I couldn't do a direct drawing of that image because it was copywritten and all this stuff
Yeah.
with USA Today or whoever. But I basically recreated the Tom Brady sack with some other funny things in there of the Kelsey Mummers parade outfit and other fun stuff, and it turned into this massive billboard that was displayed in New England,
Yeah.
and going into it, like, I had no idea what to expect. There wasn't really a lot of pay involved or money involved. It was just kind of for fun,
Yeah.
and
Marketing, if
yeah,
nothing else.
marketing and all
Yeah.
that good stuff. And quicker than I could realize, it blew up like crazy, and I was getting contacted by reporters in Philadelphia and in Boston,
Yeah.
and all this stuff, man. And literally to this day, there's probably like every big publication name you could think of did a story on it. I was like, wow, there must be nothing going on right now in the sports world because everybody seems to care about this billboard. I mean, it was on
uh,
Sports Center, it was on NFL Today, it was everywhere, and it was just like, man, it was
you're
crazy.
attacking the juggernaut, right? It was the Patriots. It's like attacking the Lakers. You're gonna put that in the storyline for sure.
Yeah, so that was cool, and it was a little bittersweet because like some of the biggest outlets like ESPN did not give me my flowers, and I did not get
Oh, really?
recognition
Okay.
and tagged on social media, like all this stuff that I was like, man, like, why is it so difficult, So
Was that
um,
something that you learned maybe through the process? Was it something that maybe was a misstep on your end to make sure that you were getting tagged on these things, or was it just disrespectful? Like reporting on their end to not
Yeah,
source.
it's tough. It was a learning lesson to maybe be more direct and say, like, hey, like, make sure you do this or make sure you do that type thing. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's also like it's really on them, to know
Yeah.
that stuff. They
Yeah.
know better.
They know
Um,
the source. Yeah. To be able to
yeah,
like footnote. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's a bummer. But
yeah.
did any business opportunities come from that specific, moment in history?
Um, Not necessarily, but
No.
it was cool. It was cool to have,
Yeah.
like the newspaper article about it and the different accolades of it, and it was cool. But definitely not my most proud or appreciative thing that I've done. But it always feels kind of random with how much publicity it got.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think this one's probably one that you're more proud of. In 2020, there's a Joe Burrow cigar photo. Why don't you dig into this one for us?
yeah, man. So obviously, a lot of my work is Philadelphia based. I'm a Philadelphia sports fan. That's always kind of been my bread and butter. And really, I hadn't done a lot of non Philly sports stuff up until 2020, and was starting to feel more and more like, all right, I need to try to expand. I need to focus on other guys who are building their own legacy that I can capture through my art. And
Yeah.
Joe Burrow was somebody I was following that season, and I thought what he was doing was incredible. I loved his demeanor. I loved what he was saying on and off the field, and just everything about it. And after they won the championship, there was this iconic picture of him smoking that cigar, and I was like, man, this is incredible. And I was flooded with messages like, man, you have to paint this.
Isn't it cool
Um,
that people already knew to really go to you and be
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Hey,
and
you
and
have to
and
do
I
this."
get that a lot now. People are always when like a big moment happens, you get your couple people like tagging me or commenting like hitting me up like, dude, you got to do this, and I always appreciate that. People are thinking of me for that. So yeah, I literally like had no expectations, had no plans. I just that night was like, I'm doing this. And I spent the next week creating this painting where I added like the Heisman Trophy and I added the championship trophy and other things, and made this painting um, and put it out there. And man, still to this day, one of my biggest releases ever,
One of
just
your
because of
first
how
real big viral moments, right?
yeah, my first real big viral moment, way different than the Billboard one. And, I think it was a combination of just how quickly I did it. Nobody had done it, and it was such a big moment.
Yeah.
And that put me on the map quickly in the Baton Rouge area. And it led to me eventually, it led to me connecting with the photographer who took that picture
Okay.
and linking up with the Burrow family and making sure a portion of all the prints we sold go to the Joe Burrow Fund in Ohio and another foundation. And it led to me going on this whole trip down to the south to Baton Rouge, where Matt Moscona, who does ESPN down there, had me on his show, and
Wow.
I went on a couple other shows. I had this whole like
Yeah, you had a
tour
road
down.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool, and I flew the painting down there, all this stuff. Um, so it was amazing, and that led to many more relationships that I still have to this day, which is pretty cool. So
That's
yeah, it's
that's an
just
awesome story. Yeah. And by the way,
yeah,
we'll be showing all these pictures as well. I'm going to put them in post so that people appreciate what we're talking about here. So then in 2021, on the road to victory, this is an Eagles montage. This is something that I believe I researched you worked on for 2 to 3 years. So why don't you tell us what this piece is? Let folks know the magnitude of like the size of this beast of an artwork that you put together and just how it came to be.
yeah. So definitely, still to this day, probably my most proud piece, and the one that took the most work. Um, but I had this gentleman who I built this relationship with, and he's also kind of one of the reasons that I was able to connect with Brian Dawkins too. And the stars aligned with him eventually, where I always had this vision to create this massive dream scene type piece that actually was inspired by Jamie Cooper, who is an artist in Australia who makes, they're
Okay.
called dream scenes, and he does them for like Real Madrid and all the biggest football
Interesting.
organizations in the world. And he ironically did one of those for the Philadelphia Phillies back in 2008 when they won the World Series.
Mhm.
And that's when I was in high school. And I was like, man, like eventually I was like, I would love to create an Eagles version of that hasn't been done before for the
Yeah.
Eagle fan base. And but it's because of how much time and energy it would take. It's not possible without being funded. So this guy came in with a vision to commission something similar, and the stars aligned, and boom, there I had it. This guy was going to fund the project for me to create it. So yeah, it took about 2 years to make this thing. I'd say about half the time was spent just researching and deciding who's going to go in there, where they're going to be placed. Making a scene, not just a collage.
Yeah.
So much went into it, and it's just so cool how it came together, and the fact that this guy was like the best client you could ever ask for. Like like every time I'd update him like, hey, like, so like, don't worry, like, take as long as you need, you know what I mean? Like,
Really? Yeah.
this guy
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
no agenda, no worries, you know, because you always worry about those things too. But yeah, it just really came together nicely. 41 players and coaches all in one piece.
How long is the piece?
15 feet.
15 feet. And then tall?
It's like 180 inches by like 40 or so inches tall. And this thing still hangs in his living room.
That's a beautiful piece.
So
It honestly is, with a little bit of a dig at someone. You want to touch on
yes.
that?
Well, now I have two digs at that someone, and it's someone who I love
Oh,
as an
that's
athlete too.
right. That's right.
But unfortunately, there's just so many funny Philly moments against him. Well, it's actually one moment against him really from the Super
Yeah.
Bowl, but
Yeah.
uh,
I love how you plug that in.
yeah, and that is most people's favorite part about it. Probably my favorite part about it too, just because it wasn't planned and it was like a last minute addition. You know,
Really?
going
Was
through
it
and
your
like,
idea, the client's idea? How did that
oh
come
yeah,
about?
everything was my idea. My client when we started gave me a list of like 10 guys, 10 players that he wanted, and I
I
I
think you
took it
took it up
to
a
a
notch.
yeah. I mean, there's a video of this guy had a whole unveiling party when I finished this thing. He had
Okay.
friends and family over. We had this thing draped with a black cloth, and in front of like 50 people, we unveiled it. And up until that point, he hadn't seen it. He had no
Wow.
idea how far I went with it. Um, and he didn't know about the Brady thing either. So
Yeah.
it was just cool to see that in there, and so many people appreciate that part. Um,
I I
and
love
I
that.
call it my Where's Waldo effect, you know.
Yeah,
So
I still struggle to find it sometimes when I look at it. I'm like, all right, there it is, there it is. Before
mhm.
we jump into Immortals, the trading cards, I'm just curious when it comes to a big piece like that, or even smaller pieces. Are you the type of artist that is blocking out a specific time in your day every day to work on your pieces, or are you the type of artist that like you can wake up in the middle of the night and if you're inspired, you're turning on the lights and you're jumping into it?
Well, I'm definitely a night owl,
Okay,
and I'm most productive and most creative at nighttime. You know, a lot of my best ideas come at nighttime, and but no, I don't wake up in the middle of the night with an idea.
okay.
But I do, depending on how quickly I'm trying to work on something or how into it I am. You know, I can find myself pulling an all nighter sometimes. You know,
Wow, very cool.
so it depends, but yeah.
All right. So as Spector Sports Arts continues to mature and evolve, so have the offerings. And so now you're dabbling into the world of trading cards. So I want to read this directly from the website. Immortal trading cards offer a redefined perspective on remarkable individuals who have undeniably shaped our sports world. These cards celebrate a legacy that transcends time and a career that remains unforgettable. Immortal Trading Cards captures a unique moment in history, one that has never been portrayed quite like this before. It's not just the person and their legacy that endure, but also timeless artistry of cards themselves. So on these cards, tell us the inspiration. How long had you been thinking about dabbling in this space? Of course, the boom in 2020 might have been a little bit of like the now's the time to start doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us about the inspiration, the research, and then we can dig in a little bit more.
Yeah, so it was definitely the 2020 boom and what Tops was doing that had me intrigued. And you know, I when they did Top 70, um,
Mm,
I had a couple artists I already knew who were picked to be a part of that.
yeah.
One of them is a very talented artist in Philadelphia, Chuck Styles, and I bought pretty much every one of his cards. And you know, just became more and more intrigued by everything. And unfortunately, they still to this day have not hit me up to do anything. But I, regardless of that, found different projects that I thought were so cool. And there was a couple like individual artist athlete collaborations that I saw and bought the card, and I was like, wow. So I before I launched Immortals, I already for 2 years like wanted to do something,
Yeah.
and and had those seeds planted even a little bit with Brian Dawkins, but
Yep.
nothing really worked out or moved forward when I wanted it to initially. And everything happens for a reason, and I think it was meant to wait until when we did it last year because everything worked out so well. But yeah, it was about 2021 that I really started thinking about it and wanting to
Indeed.
do the card thing. But when I got into it last year, I didn't want to just do this one-off card and boom, here's what we got. I really wanted to make this my own and
Hmm.
do something as unique as I could that I didn't see anybody else doing, and for the customer's sake, have it feel like an experience, not just a card, but you're opening this box, all these details, all the storytelling, and I wanted them to feel the value of what they're paying,
Yeah.
so. And then on top of that, with Brian, we have a portion going to his foundation. How can we support a good cause through this? All these different things that are important to me that I think make it the most epic project that we could.
Yeah, you checked a
And
lot of the boxes for sure. And one thing that stood out to me is you made sure to create rarity in the cards. There's a limit to them as well, right? There's I
Mhm.
think each run has a certain number out there. What went into the research, and did you consult with folks? Like, what went into how did that look like before you actually decided what it was going to look like
Yeah, the number one rule for me was consulting with the people.
in the space? Yeah.
I had built relationships or knew certain people in the card space whose value I or whose opinion I value,
Hmm.
and the majority decision was for sure to not offer the cards as a hey, these ones are this price, these ones are this price.
That's
It
right.
was instead to have a lower price point where everybody has a fair shot to land some of these more rare autograph cards or
Hmm.
parallels. And obviously, the more of them that you buy, the better chance you have. But
That's
at
right.
least everybody still has a fair shot. Like I think the person who got the one of one from the Dawkins project, I think he bought like two cards, and there was
Wow.
people who bought 10, 15, 20. So it just goes to show like it's cool from that standpoint that you have a shot to get something cool. And even my goal was like, even if you don't get those are like the bonus. Even without those, the base card is still awesome in itself.
Correct. Correct.
So I
Yeah,
want
you have a exclusive and limited base card anyways out of a collection that, is no longer going to be available unless you buy it off of eBay or at a card show, right?
exactly. Exactly. And as time has gone on, I've now seen the after effects of that, especially when we released the Brandon Graham card. You got X amount of more Eagles fans who just never saw the Dawkins one. And they're like, hey, how can
That's
I
right.
get one? Unfortunately, it's sold out. But we have X, Y, and Z people that bought multiple who are selling it on eBay. So it's
Yep.
been cool to see the value of those go up pretty quickly,
Yeah.
just based on how much people are selling them for on eBay.
And so that was edition 1 and 2 that you just touched on, right? We had the Dawkins, the inaugural piece, the Brandon Graham piece, that was number 2. And then we get to Bull Nickel, which is where I found you through. This hit my radar, and I thought this card just stood out to me. I was like, holy crap, what's the story behind it? And that's kind of how, I slipped into your DMs eventually. But tell me, how did the link between you and Bo come to be?
So, one of those individuals who really helped give me good insight and his opinion on collecting cards, his name's Frank Murphy. He actually he's a teacher and he writes children books too. But he collects a ton of Bo stuff and other cards too. And through the process with the Dawkins card and the BG card, he was always there to kind of give his advice or give his opinion, and he's always been super helpful.
Yeah.
And he always had this great relationship with Bo before I knew him.
Hmm.
And from the jump, from the very beginning, he's like, "Hey, I know you're not ready for it now, but this guy Bo Nickel, you have to do a card with him. Not only is he UFC's golden child, but he is probably going to be champion. And on top of that, he collects his own cards and loves
That's right.
trading cards, and he's
That's
super
right.
into it. So and on top of that, he's very similar to you, like talking to me, as far as just treats everybody right. He's very respectful and he's just a good dude. So that led to eventually Immortals Trading Card 3, which we
Yep.
dropped on April 18th. And yeah, man, it's been quite a journey.
Did Bo have a lot of input into this, or was it also like go ahead and run with it?
Yeah, it's fun to figure out, people's personalities, because Brian Dawkins is very detailed, very into it, and he had a ton of input. And not a ton of input. Like, I did my thing for the initial concept, but
Yeah.
first showing it to him last year, he was like, he loved it, and he's like, but let's change
Let's
this, add
yeah.
this, and with Brandon Graham, he was like, he can, not that he could care less, he just loved it, like, and no changes, nothing,
Yeah.
and that's just how he is. He just loves everything. And Bo, same thing. He's like, man, I want people to do what they do, and I don't want to
Yeah.
give much insight at all. um but the one thing that he did ask, if I could include it, if it was possible, was to have his paying homage to his son Ace,
Hmm.
and that
Which
ties
is
into not.
cleverly baked in there. It took me a while to actually find it.
Yeah. I'm glad you found it. Yeah, and then even the name of the card itself plays into that too. So that was really the only input, but the rest of it, that was all me. If you go to the product page where you can buy one, listed out there under the important details and description is all the fun facts about the project, how it works, the randomization, the different parallels that you could hit, the different autograph cards that you could hit, even the meanings behind the different numbers. Like, why is there 17 of this? Why is there 2,717 cards in total?
Mm.
um, and all those fun facts of how we put it together and how it's pieced together. And yeah, right at the top, you'll see the pre-order information of everything begins shipping late May. And the main
Late
reason
May.
for that is because the custom boxes that we do, which is cool in itself. Like, it's not just the card, it's about the box too. I try to make the box as cool as I can. Those take so much longer on production, and they ship from overseas. So, it's just a matter of waiting, and we start that process long before the project releases, but it takes so long. So that's really the only reason, because the cards are done a little bit
Okay.
earlier, and it's just a matter of, we get those, everything gets randomized, packaged up, sealed, and shipped out.
How many iterations did you actually create before you landed on where we landed?
Um, Not many. There actually, I mean, there wasn't that many pictures of Bo to begin with, especially in the
Hmm.
UFC. There's some cool moments he has had, such as, like, there was a one fight he was up on the cage after, celebrating, and like some knockouts, or like the one where he's like
Yeah.
this, like,
Yeah.
that's it, stuff like that. But for me, I always love to bring the energy, and,
Yeah.
and bring the passion. And the original picture of him flexing like that was actually, I didn't even realize it till after, because I found it on Google. But it was
Okay.
his cover photo on his Facebook fan page,
Interesting.
and that was the first picture I found that I was like, wow, this is cool. I could work with this.
Yeah.
So I use that as the base, right? I first start with the position or the action of the individual for the
Hmm.
card, and then I build everything else around that. So everything kind of came naturally after that point. The 27:17, Bo's one of his favorite Bible verses, iron sharpens iron. That ties directly into the iron of the cage,
Yeah.
and that really influenced the aura and the elements of the card that surround him. Having it feel like he's ripping the octagon apart, and then you got,
Yeah.
like, the barbed wire around him, like,
Which is what he's
so
holding. Yeah.
yeah, and we had a podcast too, like, uh, in the beginning, where I talk about the card a lot and the different details, and there's so much depth to it, and that's what I wanted to create, because there's a lot of depth to his story already. So I
Yeah.
wanted to be able to not only highlight his success so far in the UFC, but pay homage to his success as a legend in college wrestling.
In
So
college, yeah. Yeah, you have his record on there. You have iron sharpens iron. You have the this is what we do. You have his son's name cleverly put in there as well. Ace. What else? There was the Roy in there, which stands for the Rookie of the Year 2023. What else am I missing? You have the Bo Show. Yeah, I mean, there's so much detail into it that what was his reaction? What was Bo's reaction when he first got to see this? Did he see this? Did he have an idea of how this was coming along, or was it a brand new reveal to him as well?
yeah, so I love surprises in life. I feel like it makes life more exciting.
And you better believe I like surprises too, which is why we have a surprise for you guys. We will be giving away one of these Immortal rookie cards of Bo Nickel to someone who subscribes, comments on this video, and follows Jordon on Instagram at Spector_Art. Once again, very simple steps, 3 of them. Subscribe to this channel, comment on this video, and follow Jordon on Instagram at Spector_Art. Good luck, y'all. Yeah.
So part of the marketing and the content we get is like the first meetup with the athlete is unveiling the artwork and just getting their reaction on camera. So that was what we did. We went up to Penn State early April before Bo was going out to Vegas.
Yeah.
And we got together, and Bo was kind enough to also ask if we could do a whole podcast episode about the card and stuff. And so we did that. And prior to that, the first part of the meetup was him walking into the podcast room, and I had the art set up, and I unveiled it, dropped the cloth, and then he just sees it, and it was probably the best reaction that I've had so far out of the 3 cards.
What's the funniest memory or something that stood out by meeting Bo Nickel that just caught you off guard?
Caught me off guard about Bo. I would say just how relaxed he actually is, and it fathoms me. Like, and it makes sense because he's done this his whole life, especially wrestling. Like, he's used to the high pressure situations, but it's like even prior to his fight, I was surprised with the communication I had with him, and him just seeming pretty calm. And it's impressive because, and it's not what I do, but I can't imagine, you're going to war in a day or a couple of weeks or whatever, and it's like, it's so much.
And
So
he's just so relaxed, yeah. Even though he's about to go in there and try to demolish somebody.
Yeah. So that was it's always a breath of fresh air with that type of demeanor.
Very cool. And so then UFC 300. Before we get into the experience, the very back of this card itself will tell you that you've been a UFC fan since the Chuck Liddell era. But I want to know: is there an earliest memory of a fight or a fighter other than Chuck Liddell that really stands out? When did UFC hit your radar? Growing up, and was it something that you watched pretty proactively for the big cards on weekends? I just want to know that so that we have a sense of how excited you were and what it meant to be at UFC 300 live.
Yeah, it was surreal because I was there from the Chuck Liddell days, and I don't know which UFC video game it was, but I played the one where you had Chuck Liddell, Rampage Jackson, Shogun. Shogun was actually one of my favorite fighters.
I have a beautiful card of him right here. I'll show it to you after.
Yeah. Oh man. So that's when it began for me when I was much younger, and the fanhood ebbed and flowed though. Like, I kind of fell off for a while. I was really excited when like Ronda Rousey was fighting, Conor McGregor. My most recent interest coming back into the UFC was Izzy. I love Izzy, big Izzy fan.
Which you have a piece of.
Yeah. So I did a painting of him last year, just out of pure passion for the sport. I did that piece last year after his Pineda knockout.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a fan for a long time. So it was, for me to ever think I'd be at a UFC event wasn't there very often. So it was cool to be able to attend and see.
Was this your first live event?
First ever live UFC.
Holy crap. Wow. Yeah. There's no topping it until like UFC 400 in like 10 years.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
So tell me the experience.
It was amazing, man. I mean, we were pretty high up, but pretty high up's a pretty good view, and I think it's perfect because you're in a basketball arena, so you can still see everything pretty well. If it
Yeah,
was like a football stadium, it'd be different.
yeah,
But man, like I mean, we can all admit Bo's fight was boring, which was expected. And, unless he was going to knock him out, it was just going to be a
yeah,
choke out, and that's what it was. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, but I
Were
expected
you
that.
nervous? Were you nervous though watching it?
I was, man. I was
You
nervous
felt like
enough.
you
I was like,
had skin
man,
in the game.
man, Bo better win this thing. But he lives up to the expectations, and I think a lot of fans of him from Penn State and now UFC, like you can tell he has a very high potential.
Yeah.
He's just so dominant. So I'm excited to see where he goes. But man, that Gaethje knockout, man,
Yeah.
that was that. Am I saying his last name correct? Gaethje.
Gaethje,
Uh,
Gaethje, yeah, close
Gaethje,
enough.
Gaethje. Yeah, but man, I mean, I have never seen somebody get knocked out like that in real life, and to just see that, and it was scary too. I mean, it was like, man, like
Yeah,
this wasn't just a knockout; it was like vicious. He was
yeah,
out. He was out for like probably a minute.
yeah.
Um, so it was just surreal to see
Do you
that.
remember? Do you remember the moment still very clearly? Max pointing down, which that shirt, by the way, right here, it's Max pointing down. Do you remember that moment, those last 10 seconds, and what was the feeling like to be in that arena when that moment happened and the whole crowd erupts?
It was crazy. It was crazy. I have a video. I wish I was videoing it like when it happened, but as soon as it happened, I put my phone. I was like, "Wow! Like I got to capture this, man!" The place erupted. Oh my gosh! And it was crazy because we were there from like the very beginning, and if anything, I was like, "Oh man, I don't want to be late to this." We got there like three
Correct,
something, and
correct.
technically
You
it
want to
started
watch
like
everything.
yeah, technically it started at like two something, and we got there at three something, and it was empty.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
which I was surprised to see and hear about because I mean, you would have missed the Jim Miller versus Bobby Green, which is an exciting fight. That was 2 fights in, bloody war went all the way.
that's when we
But yeah,
got there, like right after that.
okay, okay, got it. And
Yeah,
who was there with you? It was just you and a buddy, you and a girlfriend.
girlfriend. Yep.
Lovely, lovely. How was that her first card as well?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What was her
She-
take on the UFC? Too bloody for her? Or did she enjoy it?
no, she enjoys it. I have number one converted her into a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Yeah, I
She
mean
she,
that's a requirement. Otherwise, she wouldn't be your
yeah,
girlfriend, right?
she's from Costa Rica, so she doesn't have any fanhood or didn't have any fanhood of American football or anything like
Yeah,
that. And now she's a huge fan, and yeah, she enjoys UFC too. Like she'll watch, when I was watching Izzy and when he knocked out Pereira, like stuff like
yeah,
that. So she's into it.
that's incredible. And were you able to connect with Bo after the card as well, or was it just leading up to it and then you went on your way?
Yeah, so he that was one of the main reasons I went out is because he had a pre-planned event after the fight, just at his
Okay.
Airbnb.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a party or anything like that; it was just a get
Yeah.
together. A bunch of friends that were in town, and there was some random heavy hitters that showed up. Chris Pratt was there,
Oh
which
wow.
was pretty insane, and a couple other big names too. But yeah, we went there after the fight, and I brought the larger canvas we have out there to
Yeah.
display at the event. So we had that, and talk to people
Did
about it
Chris
and
Pratt
stuff.
get to see it? Did you see him like walk over
Oh
to
man,
it and
I
take a
was
look?
actually really bummed because it's like you try to make all your plugs in these moments,
Yeah.
and he was basically surrounded the whole time by a group of people. Like, he was probably like telling stories or whatever, and before
Yeah.
you knew it, he was just gone, and I didn't even get to talk to him. So
Hey. Well,
it
there
is
will
what
be
it
another
is.
time. Like you said, you there's a patience to it as well. If the time's not right, there will be another time.
Yeah, exactly. But we did send him a bow card. We did ship him a
Okay.
bow card.
He was on the list. That's good. That's good.
It's on the list. Yep.
Awesome. So, I mean, To wrap it up, upcoming events or drops. What's next on your milestone list? What are you working on in 2024 that you can share that you're excited about, and maybe even like some short term goals that you're trying to tackle over the next, say, 12 months?
Yeah, so obviously I'm trying to keep the card thing going and really
Okay.
love the potential to that, and just
Yeah,
trying to lock in more deals. And like I like having the true collaboration with the athletes. It's not like I might eventually start dropping just my own cards, my own creation, but like for me,
okay,
it's like I got to do it with the athlete. Like I want them involved. I want it to be as
that's right.
legit as it can, and it just adds that much more nostalgia to it. So the next card that I'm probably going to be locking in is with Allen Iverson. So that'll be
Wow.
pretty cool. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. And it'll be obviously it's easier for me to be doing these Philly guys, but I'm
Of
hoping
course.
to get more non-Philly and kind of go back and forth. Philly 1 month, a non-Philly another month, and I'd love to do more UFC guys too.
I would
I
love for
feel I
you to
feel
do more UFC guys.
I feel like depending on who it is, but like in general, I feel like they're easier to work with, and they're a little bit more into it.
Yeah.
Um, so I would love to work with all these guys. I would love to work with Pineda. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Alex Pereira, yeah, that'd be fun. I don't know if he can because he might be locked into a Tops Fanatics exclusive
Probably.
deal, but you have relationships with Fanatics, so I'm actually surprised Tops hasn't reached out to you yet because Fanatics owns them, but maybe it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where people think and say that thing, but it's so much bigger than that, and it is what it is. But yeah. So that with Iverson, and actually tomorrow I'm dropping a new painting of Jason Kelsey. He has a big autograph opportunity in May. So basically, we'll have an autograph option to purchase. So that launches
Wow,
tomorrow.
very cool.
Um, and then in general too, just trying to clean up the card drops more and more and make them even better of an experience for people. And it's always good too to we get a lot of feedback that people really love the whole experience between how we have things laid out on the website, the emails that they get leading up to it and after, just like so much that goes into it.
Yeah,
I'm hoping to clean that up more and more and keep this thing rolling.
that's incredible. Well, Jordan, this has been a pleasure. I truly enjoyed this. There's so much good detail that came out of it. I love the Immortals idea. I'm excited to see what other cards drop. I love the resume that you bring to this game and your passion for what you do. It makes so much sense that you lean into sports and really bring that energy. There's so many moments that I can imagine you can recreate, like that Max moment. I'm sure you were thinking about it yourself, but you just
Yeah.
weren't in front of a canvas to be able to get that started. But I truly do appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this too. And for folks, this has been Doers Take Breaks. If you enjoy this type of content, make sure to subscribe. Until next time, we're out of here, y'all.